I believe our rooms are now open for our webinar, and I'll just give a few moments as you all enter our webinar, and want to say welcome to you all, a very warm welcome to this extremely important discussion today, on which I firmly believe the future generation of nursing really depends. Transitions into the workplaces, experiences and supports.
So imagine we are already, just so you know, over 70.
Yes.
So here you go. We will wait a few minutes because we just opened. Let's wait for a few minutes so people don't miss out on the important remarks of everybody.
Perfect. Okay.
You know, we were talking before with our senior management, Heather say hi, was sharing on how many participants are coming to the webinars that the BPG program does in relationship to evidence-based guidelines or in relationship to championship, etc. And I commented to Heather, I was impressed with the numbers. And I commented, wow, I was afraid or kind of thought that maybe people are so tired of everything that come the summer, people will not show up to the events. Well, not so. So it's good to see that our community, the collective of nurses, needs still very much these spaces for gathering, for discussion, for camaraderie, for sharing, for learning. It's just beautiful.
Okay, Doris, I think we'll get started. We do have, we're moving close to 100 participants. Our forum today is focusing on nurses transitioning into the workplaces, experiences and supports. I'm Imogene Baynock, and today I am filling in for Susan McNeil, who has taken some time off in August. I want to give you a very quick overview of today. We'll start with welcoming and opening remarks by our CEO, Doris Grinspan, and then move into our panel discussion. And you can see we have a very well-represented panel here of students with Layla Tuner, Rochelle Radick, Ola Abanta, Thomas Obru. And then we're moving to have faculty involvement in our discussion with Sandra Deluca, Michelle Hayer, and Linda Johnston. Each of our speakers, who will be introduced more in a moment, will answer two specific questions. What's it like being a nursing student during this time of COVID? Hopes, needs, and concerns. And while our students or recent students will focus more on that, certainly faculty will make some comments around what they perceive that experience has been like. And then we want to focus on what is required to support students in their final year as they transition into the workforce, so they have an exciting, meaningful, and long career in nursing. So right now, I want to make sure that you understand the webinar is being recorded. It will be posted here along with the other webinars in this series. Photographs may be taken and used on social media, so please be aware of that if you are attending. And then use your chat box for questions and comments, and we hope to have a very lively question period following our panel presentations. And then during the discussion, we ask you to unmute your line. I want to turn things now over to Doris Grinspan, who will share a welcome with you all and opening remarks. Doris.
Thank you so very much, Imogene, and so beautiful to be with all of you again today in these heart-to-heart conversations. A special time in nursing. as Kay Arpin used to use these words, quite frankly, a special time in nursing. My gosh, Kay, this has not changed. A special time in nursing again. And it's a special time because one would have thought that by now we would be kind of done with this pandemic, but here we go again, a fourth wave, and the challenges and opportunities for nurses and for nursing students will continue, certainly through the fall and winter. So the conversation today with our absolutely stellar panel and panelists is so timely and so important. It's a time of what some would call instability in the nursing profession because of 18 months of giving, and generous, amazing giving to the public, to the people of Ontario, and in other countries to other places. It's a time of giving because in more than one occasion, nurses were either absent because of illness or stress. Students not always were able to be in the workplace. So it was also giving to one another in terms of many times working beyond what the usual is, and the usual in itself is already quite a bit. It's a time of giving because students needed to adjust to new modalities of learning, faculty needed to adjust to change the teaching methodologies and the online, and do as best and as creatively as they could during the pandemic. And it's a time of giving because we need to think of the future of the profession, all of us. As difficult as things may seem from time to time, and we want to acknowledge that we know they are. We did a survey, as you know, on nurses' health and well-being, and we did a report, and we will be coming with a second major report, and then more activity on that. It behooves nursing and nurses to build the future of our profession. Yes, we can push on policy issues, and we will speak later on during this webinar about that. But at the end of the day, this is our profession. It belongs to nursing, and nursing needs to build it up to the future. So what better opportunity to have on one hand students that are the present leadership for the future of the profession, and faculty that are those that nurture, educate, and support students for the future. So thank you so very much for allowing me to bring a few remarks, and back to you, Imagine.
Oh, thank you very much, Doris. And yeah, as you talked, I was thinking it's the best of times, and yet with some of the challenges, the worst of times. But we'll make the best of it, and grow. So today, as we've mentioned, we do have a stellar panel, and I want to introduce all of our 7 presenters very briefly initially, and then ask them each to speak in turn in the order in which I introduce them. And they'll each have about 5 minutes to consider 2 different questions, which I will share with you again following the introduction. So our first speaker is Layla Tuner, and Layla is the president of the Nursing Students of Ontario, and she is currently working in or interested in oncology research and oncology, working in OR nursing and student leadership. So welcome, Layla. And then Rochelle Radic. Rochelle is a new RN. And here's where I was saying I wish we could have the congratulations with all the sparks coming out of that term for you, Rochelle. Rochelle is the co-chair of the Indigenous Nurses and Allies Interest Group. She identifies as Indigenous with the background being part settler and part Anishinaabe from Georgian Island. She is working in clinical research and Indigenous health. Our third speaker is Ola Abanta Thomas Obru. She's in her final year of the nursing BSEN program at York University. And she's enormously, I love that word, involved in RNAO and in her school. And she's a panel member of the Black Nurses Task Force and a founding member of another new interest group, the Black Nurses Leading Change interest group. Our fourth speaker then is Sandra Deluca. Sandra is no stranger to RNAO, to student forums. Sandra is the Associate Dean of the School of Nursing at Fanshawe. She's an adjunct associate professor, health sciences at Western University, and she chairs the provincial heads of nursing, fondly known as CATS. So welcome, Sandra. Our next speaker is Michelle Hayer. Michelle is Director of Seniors Care, the Canadian Institute for Seniors Care at Conestoga College. She has been a registered nurse for over a decade. She has a vast array of clinical experience, all the way from complex continuing care, including mental health, and of course, gerontology. Michelle is dedicated to helping prepare nurses to care for older adults. Dean Linda Johnston from the Lawrence Bloomberg Faculty of Nursing, University of Toronto, is the chair of the Council of Ontario University Programs, again fondly known as CUPN, and the co-chair of the Joint Provincial Nursing Committee and board of directors of the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing. And of course, Linda, in her various roles, is keenly involved in students, in student clinical practice and transition. And then our final speaker today will be Layla Manakil-Rankin. And Layla hails from Nipissing University, where she is an associate graduate faculty, and she's a Canadian certified nurse educator. Layla is also the BPSO co-lead at Nipissing University, which is a BPSO. And Layla is a faculty member who pays a lot of attention to students and to their experiences in both their theory and their practice work. And she's very proud of the activities students created and implemented to experience and influence patient outcomes through the BPSO. So with that, and these introductions, I will now then turn things over to our first panelist, Layla, and these will be the questions that I'll ask the panelists to consider. And of course, those who have been or are currently in a student role may focus more on the first question: what has it been like being a nursing student during this time? What are your hopes, needs, and concerns? And the faculty involved would no doubt focus more on the second question: what is required to support students in their final year as they transition into the workforce, so they have an exciting and long career in nursing? So without further ado, let me turn things over to you, Layla, and ask you to start us off and think about speaking for about 5 minutes. Go ahead, Layla.
Thank you, Imogen, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Lale. I am currently a fourth-year BSc student at York University, as well as president of Nursing Students of Ontario Interest Group within RNAO. However, that's not the only role I hold. I hold many positions in my school as well as outside within CNSA. And also I do research alongside my nursing professors currently on oncology nursing that I finally found a professor who was interested in that field. And then work-wise, I am a case manager currently working for Ontario Ministry of Health. And today I am joining you to talk about these topics. And my perspective is obviously, has been told before, yes, may not be applicable to the entire nurse community, but through my involvement in various organizations and also which focused on student leadership. And I what I'm going to talk about today is whatever I've heard from students from different schools within my school and all over Ontario. So for the student experiences during COVID, I was in my third year as well. When it hit, I was halfway through my second year. So one of the biggest things, and obviously it affected everybody, was the constant uncertainty that we had to bear. And this was anxiety provoking for a lot of students. And where my perspective comes from is to also, I was tasked to read a lot of student experiences. Being in the executive committee for nursing students of Ontario, we were getting some applications for nursing student of the month. And we had a lot of people actually recommending their friends and the ordeals that they have to go through. And one of the things that I've noticed in the pattern was that for those, it affected those who were also living in unstable housing, unstable employment, unstable emotional relationships with others. And I felt that those were the ones who were affected the most because they didn't know when they're going to go to school, if they can continue their employment, or if they're going to have a job tomorrow, or if will they be able to pay for school tomorrow. So not having everything laid out, at least within a reasonable time frame for them, was very hard. And I was one of those who were affected because I had to move all the time. I didn't even have status in the country until later on. And I didn't know what to do at that time. And the second thing that concerned us nursing student was within the school environment was the unclear communication. Because we were getting told things and then it had to change, then it had to change, and it had to change. And we didn't know, because we were new to all the faculty members, we didn't know what to expect regarding class material and expectations. And all the course outlines had to change to actually fit the current online environment that we are. And it turned to mostly assignments and instead of the tests that we were mostly used to. And we've seen some discrepancies between the grading criteria. And we also we couldn't really feel the genuine care for student success. So we also received some complaints from students from other schools that they were concerned. But again, there was so much we could do as students, and those concerns should have been, and as we told them, should be communicated to those who have the decision-making powers. And another thing, and this was a big thing, especially within my school, and through my role in CNSA, I learned it was actually mostly affected the Toronto students was the placements and labs. And what happened was most of our placements got canceled, and some people were prioritized because of their lack of experience or because they had to do their consolidation. And I've noticed that a lot of the students who didn't have in-person placements and labs were focused in the Toronto area schools, UFT, I heard in CNSA. I heard in CNSA Ryerson, but my peers told me different things. Some of them had placements, things like that. But York University obviously couldn't offer placements and still can't in this fall semester for us. And what was offered by ONA later on with their advocacy for students was those clinical externship positions where at that time there were 6 hospitals in Ontario, in Toronto area and GTA area, who were hiring students to work in basically UCP positions. But the feedback that I've gotten from my peers was that it didn't suffice to replace the hospital experience, and I'm not talking about the nursing student hospital experience where they perform nursing procedures, and mostly because they were so limited in what they could do. They couldn't even do vitals, and they wish there were a little bit more learning opportunities for them in those positions, and at least have somewhat a bit of the taste of when they were doing clinicals. We understood that they would never be able to do that, but again, more learning opportunities would be the point of what they wanted to do. And a lot of students are concerned about placement because they fear that after they graduate, they wouldn't be find employment, because placements are for them is not only for learning new skills and getting used to how the hospitals work or their communication skills, but also about networking and employment afterwards. Because a lot of students were told, and also by the faculty members who um, work in the positions that would hire new RNs in their hospitals, would that if they would be looking at the students who worked in the hospital more favorably. But again, when they didn't get that experience and they couldn't get the when they couldn't get the networking experience that they could get while if they had placements, they started worrying about getting employment afterwards. And in that time, whatever we wanted to focus on to make the experience better was to networking through your peers, and also trying to look for employment on different platforms, different nursing roles. For example, for vaccination efforts, there were vaccinator positions available mostly out of Toronto. There were positions available for it was a Ministry of Health. There were other positions such as in camps for nursing students. And in terms of second questions, and I have three things that I want to quickly speak about. One of them is how they can do the transition between workforce better is to, one thing that I can say is the resources. We want resources dedicated to for rotation of new grads when they just get hired. And we know that those resources will be available. Maybe there could be more tolerance or more extended. They could be extended in duration, and maybe common review of skills again, because we couldn't practice those skills in at least a year and a half, and so that the students don't feel like they're thrown in the fire pit. And the second thing would be is more like as a profession wise, as a nursing profession, which I follow very closely, is to genuine and active efforts for the well-being of nurses, which became extremely important and extremely challenging to achieve during the COVID times that I could see. And this was discussed between the other RNAO members in the recent Twitter dialogue. And yes, we know that these unpleasant facets of nursing profession exist, and all the nursing leaders are doing their best to advocate for nurses to give them better working hours, their vacations, repeal Bill 124. But we wanted to have and the nursing, what I've seen also is like as nursing students, and also I've seen nurses, we often prioritize the patients and we don't prioritize our well-being as well, because we are so selfless. We focus on them, but it becomes later on unsustainable and impractical for nurses to not burn out. And as in the long term, maybe the efforts to focus on that could give us a better idea and of how we can stay in the nursing profession and so on.
Lally, I wonder, you just ended on such a critical point there about self-care, and I thank you for all of your comments. And I wonder if we can move on, and maybe if you have other comments, you can work them into the discussion period. But thank you very much. Such a fulsome point of view that you've shared. let's maybe now turn to Rochelle for her comments. And thank you again, Lali.
Perfect. And great points, Lolly. I really enjoyed listening to you. So first, I'd like to start off by explaining why I became a nurse. So I was inspired to be a nurse because my mom is also a registered nurse and a proud RNAO member as well. And I saw how fulfilled and happy she was every day to be able to touch the lives of her patients. And I wanted to have that follow in her footsteps and feel proud of what I was doing with my career path as well. So nursing school is challenging enough as it is, but it's also a very, everyone knows we've all gone through nursing school, but then throwing a global pandemic on top of it obviously created its own challenges, but an extremely rewarding experience. It was very much a roller coaster of emotions. It was a time of fear, a time of uncertainty, but it was also a time of learning and resiliency. Like most students, I lost placements because of the pandemic, and that impacted me in a lot of ways because I was worried if my skills wouldn't be good enough, if I was losing out on those important skills that I needed to be able to provide safe care to my patients. However, because I was working as an RPN at the time as well, I was able to still have that opportunity to have those patient care experiences, unlike some students who are just completing their BSCN programs. I found that I really grew my skills during this time as a leader. During the pandemic, working with faculty at the school to create open communications between students and the school, which was so essential during the pandemic because there was so much uncertainty, and it really helped to kind of have that bridge to have the students know what was going on, but also having one single point person to communicate everything that was going on really helped faculty as well, because well, I'm sure every faculty member out there knows that every single nursing student is emailing them and asking them probably the same question. So, it kind of helped to have one person to go to for those points. But I also, during this time, was able to really reflect on where I saw myself going as an RN, and that I wanted to continue to grow these leadership skills. So I was able to assist in the creation of the Indigenous Nurses and Allies Interest Group. And with that, my hopes with being an RN is to continue to advocate as a leader for Indigenous health, to advocate for students who would like to learn more about Indigenous health and why it's so important to do so. And I look forward to creating and working with the RNAO and the INAG team to create these safe spaces for Indigenous nurses and Indigenous health. I want to make sure that we are continuing, and I think one of the main points that I'm very passionate about and that I think is so essential, and that I find that, well, at least the nursing schools that I went to, there wasn't enough education surrounding Indigenous health, or about the Truth and Reconciliation calls to action, or trauma-informed care, which are huge points because, how are you supposed to deliver care to these clients if you don't know how to do it, right? And it shouldn't fall on the nursing students to learn those skills. So it was definitely a gap that I want to continue to advocate for, and I know that with INAG we will do so. And I think that I think there is a bright future ahead in terms of this partnership. And as the pandemic continues, I think one of the biggest things that is essential for students is to make sure that there is open communication. If it is as simple as choosing one student who can have that communication, so that you don't have to send out mass emails, or one person who can have faculty's personal emails, or maybe, some faculty would even text me. And it really helped because it would, if there was questions that had to be answered, it really helped everybody in terms of, and helped our inboxes. But I think also it's no secret that healthcare is not in the best place right now. A lot of us are tired. And I think one of the things that is the most essential for students going forward is we need to create and continue to advocate for safe environments for new students and new grads, where they continue to feel safe and supported instead of surrounded by negativity or, you know, exhaustion or places like that. I know that everybody is exhausted, but we still need to be examples for the next generation of nurses and continue to support them. Otherwise, they're going to be burnt out as well. So miigwech today.
Thank you very much, Rochelle, and such a hopeful presentation you've shared with us. And then our last student, new grad perspective, we'll turn now to you, Ola.
She wishes, she's in the 4th year.
Pardon?
She's in the 4th
Oh,
year.
yes. No, I know.
But hey, Ola, we moved you. Just call York and tell them I'm done.
Oh, no, I said no, I meant I was trying to put the whole group together, students and new grads. Yeah.
Well, I think we just need to call York and let them know, because quite frankly, Ola is more than ready.
We've
To conquer
graduated.
the world.
Okay, Ola, go for it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this event. Thank you so much, Dr. Doris, Dr. Imagine, for this beautiful opportunity to speak about the experiences of nursing students in this pandemic. And I would like to say, first of all, a big kudos to nursing students. We've been so resilient. It's really been challenging, you know, just being shoved into this new learning environment, being pulled out of your clinical placements. It's nothing we ever expected, but for some reason we've been prevailing, we've been strong, and we've learned how to adapt. And also thank you so much to our nursing educators. It's not easy for you as well, you know, coming up with new teaching styles, just being on Zoom for a very long time. It is very challenging for everyone. And I just say thank you to everyone for just being kind and patient with everyone. Just like Lali mentioned, actually Lali is my classmate. We go to York University together. We were put out of clinical placement. I think that was right after the, what do you call it? The midterm breaks. We were hoping that for some reason we were gonna be allowed to at least finish up, but it didn't happen that way. We were presented with a new learning environment. It was very difficult. Some of us couldn't cope. And for me, one of the greatest challenges I faced was the social isolation, because being in school with your peers is so different. You know you're not alone, when you talk about the lectures, when you talk about the assignments together, it's like, okay, you understand what I'm feeling. So being alone in your bedroom, in one corner of your house, dealing with schoolwork alone, that is very difficult, very, very, very difficult. And so what I did in response to that was I started being involved in school. You know, I became a course rep. I worked in the lab. I became a peer ambassador. I got involved with RNAO. I got to speak with a lot of nursing students. I had to connect with them. And it really made me feel like I still had some support from my peers as well. And just moving on, about the challenges we have. I've been able to experience that firsthand as a clinical extern in the emergency department. We know how busy and hectic that can be. And I've had some of the nurses ask me if I still want to be a nurse. I've seen the burnt out. I've seen nurses not being able to pee. I've seen nurses not taking breaks. I've seen the whole short staffing. There's a lot of tweets going about it. I have experienced it firsthand, and it is very difficult. And so when I'm being asked if I still want to be a nurse, it is quite difficult because, well, if you see all those things and experience, do you still want to be a nurse? But then I said to the nurse, well, I think that is why I should graduate fast and, join you and help. It's a passion. It's a calling. As much as there's so many programs in the world, but I think nursing is a calling, and we choose to answer that call. So that passion, that purpose, that connection, that is what I'm hopeful for. And I'm just hoping that our nursing students can at some point take advantage of this. We also have what we call virtual simulations right now, and that is what we use. I had a podcast with my professor, Clay Millett, and I know she's here, where we talked about VSIMs and how it doesn't replace in-person clinical placements, and truly it does not. It does not. But one thing I've learned how to do is to still leverage, still take advantage. Nursing nursing students, we understand the nursing skills are very important, but we focus so much on the hard skills that we forget about the soft skills. We forget about things like compassion, leadership, the kindness, the patience. We forget about things like this. So I have to reflect on all these clinical scenarios we have, even though it's more med surgical focus, the scenarios we have in VSIMs, but I have to reflect on these scenarios. Now, what would I do as a nurse in this position? And that has really helped me as a clinical extern, because in the emergency, I've met so many families that anything as simple as giving them a cup of water, it's a huge thing. So that is what nursing is about, the compassion. And I think it's, even though it's challenging, but as nursing students, we have to, think about it again. Why did I choose this calling? And we can always build upon that and continue to connect. And one of the ways I think we can, nursing students can be helped as well, the same compassion I've talked about, because I always say, how will you show love if you've never experienced love? We need to be shown compassion, patience, kindness from our educators, from the nurses, where we do, even if it's the PSW jobs, even if it's a clinical externship, we need to see more of that. We need to be shown compassion, just so we can be kind to ourselves and be patient as well. It's been a roller coaster. It's been tough for the nurses, for everybody. So we need to, exchange the spirit of loving and kindness and compassion. And also, Lali mentioned about self-care. Yes, yes, yes. We have to learn how to take care of ourselves. A friend of mine tweeted today that hope comes from staying alive. How can you have hope when you're not living? So, you have to first take care of yourself, stay alive, take care of your mental health. And then we can be hopeful, because the future is bright. I think the nursing profession is so beautiful that regardless, you should not forget what the call is. Why did you answer this call? So we always have to connect back to that. We have mental health resources in our schools. We have nursing organizations. You can always connect to them. We have the NSO, which Lala is a president. We have RNAO, always here supporting students, speaking for students. Students should always know that we have all this support, these resources and support readily available. And at the same time, we need to still have conversations like this. Nursing students, we have to be heard. Our feelings have to be validated. That would actually boost our confidence and our hope as well. So I'm hoping that in the future, we can continue to have conversations like this. And all the nursing students out there watching, you're not alone. We all feel like that. We're scared, we're lost, but we will make it through. I'm just very hopeful.
Ola, I'll end there with you. And honestly, you, along with your colleagues, are really the firmest reason I've ever heard as to why we need students and need to engage with students. You give us hope. I tell you, thank you very much. So I'm now going to turn to those who are on faculty, which you so generously thanked, and all of you have been very generous to faculty for their efforts. So let me turn things now to Sandra Deluca. And Sandra, we know you'll speak more about the second point on supports that perhaps you've all learned students need in times like this.
Thanks, Jane, and thank you for the invite to be on the panel. And I see a number of colleagues and students on the participant list there. So hello to everybody. So I'm Sandy Deluca. I'm the Associate Dean of the School of Nursing at Fantra, which is in London, and an Adjunct Associate Professor at Western. So I kind of cross over. And just so you know, in the college system, we have the practical nursing, the BSc and the PSW programs. So we kind of have the gamut of everybody struggling with this pandemic. So it's interesting what Ola said about compassion, because the very first thing I wrote down here was what my job is, and still is, I see it as compassion during chaos, because it has been chaotic, not only for the students, but for the faculty. And so when I was trying to work my way through, what can I do to support the students and what can I do to support the faculty, I decided that's one of the most essential pieces to my job, is that compassion. So when I'm actually focusing on the second one. So I kind of see three aspects to this. I know the question Irma Jean talked about the final year of the program, but actually I see the need right at the very beginning, all the way through the program, in order to support our students. So the three aspects I actually was starting in my thinking about it is that it's the support for the well-being of the faculty, because the well-being of the faculty translates into the well-being of the students. And if the faculty are not feeling settled and secure in what they're doing, and it's been quite the struggle for them, then that kind of translates into the students' feelings also. So one of the things that I thought to myself, well, how can I support faculty and the students? So I started doing rotating calendar opportunities for anybody to join, whether that be students or faculty. Interestingly, I don't know if I assumed, I thought maybe a lot of what the faculty would actually talk about during the sessions were the challenges with teaching and whether they're doing a good job, because this is all new to them. It all happened quickly. Many of them did not have the technology skills to the degree that they needed it. But interestingly enough, a lot of the faculty discussions actually centered around their own well-being. And so the more I heard about that and their worry about the students, the more I spent time and opened up time to have a discussion with them, just off the cuff discussions in a rotating kind of a way. Because when we started the pandemic, it was like, how can I help this situation? I'm working remotely just like everybody else. We don't have the drop-in sessions, like when faculty will drop into the office, students will drop into the office. So I decided I had to create them. So I'm still doing it, and we've done it all the way through. And it's interesting the degree to which the faculty are worried about the students and worried about their teaching. So to spend some time supporting them actually, I think, supports the students. And so that's something that we're carrying on doing. The other thing I opened up was calendar time for the students. I hear numerous appeals, all the students that are on the line. That's one of the things, but I do other things besides appeals. And so I also opened up time to have frank discussions with students about anything. It didn't have to be that you did something wrong or whatever. It could be that you just wanted to talk. And also during that time, and there were a lot of appeals related to the pandemic, that compassion really came in there. It's finding that balance. Like, what do we have to make sure we have to ensure students have and are able to do competently, but also where can we bend in some of those things? Like, can we bend in some of the student appeals? I mean, I know what students are going through. It's just a major shift in what you probably expected in coming into nursing. So I really find that balance between leniency to a degree and responsibility and ensuring competence is something I've thought about quite a bit in terms of supporting students. And a third aspect to this that I found very useful, we have in London a London Nurse Leader Collaborative, and it is all of the admin, the VPs of the hospitals and the agencies and the managers of practice and various positions like that. Normally we meet about once every 2 months. We started meeting every other week. And the focus of the meeting was how to support the students. And so it was it was an excellent discussion, because we were very lucky that we could switch. It was like a chess game with our poor students. It's like, okay, there's an outbreak here, we could switch you here. But we did that with our colleagues, which made it so much easier because, and everybody was on the Zoom meetings. It was 5 o'clock on Thursdays. It started actually every week, then went to every other week. So our focus was always on the students and how to get them into clinical practice, how to ensure their competency. And I think the number one thing for students was that they would feel welcomed by the staff. And we talked about that. I know in one of our surveys we did, I think it was 2015 when we were surveying students about clinical placements, their number one issue was that they would feel welcome. And I think during this pandemic, with all of our nurses being so stressed, the nurse leaders had to really think about how to support them so that they could welcome our students during the pandemic. So,
okay, so Sandra, maybe on that note, because you got your 3 points out, and that's such
I did, Emma Jean.
wonderful note to
Wonderful.
end on. And again, you can talk more about this group. Thank you so much, Sandra. And let's move now to Michelle for your comments. And I am watching the time here, I'll tell you all. Go ahead, Michelle.
Sure, thank you. So I just wanted to thank RNAO and for the NSO for inviting me to speak today. I know it's a very scary time out there with COVID, but I do believe it really provides an exciting opportunity for nursing students to become leaders and a great opportunity to, have your professional voice heard out there. So over the last few weeks, I've really started to reflect on the question how to support students in their final year. And I share some of the same comments as Sandra. I promise we didn't practice this together, but I did have a few notes I wanted to touch on. I wanted to note first that the transition into the workforce for students is really the responsibility of all of us. I see that academic institutions, healthcare organizations, educators, other nurses, professional organizations, students, we all have to take a responsibility in this. So these conversations, I think, are really important. So with that in mind, I kind of see a few pillars that are probably really important to consider to support students, including competencies, confidence, compassion, continuing learning, and a little bit of what we call a culture of mentorship. So competencies, as Sandra alluded to, these are developed over time. Students need to feel that they have the competency required to do their job. Can you put that Foley in when you need to? And we know they're not built in a day. There's something that started the very first day of nursing school, from that first lab experience to the sim, to your clinical placements that we know didn't always happen well during COVID, unfortunately. And us academic institutions, we really had to pivot. So I know Conestoga, we actually went into our rec center, into our gym, took out the equipment and filled it with beds, filled it with lifts, and we brought our students into a huge gymnasium, and we did what we could to give people those experiences so they felt like they were building those competencies. What I would say from a student perspective, start to consider maybe where do you want to work when you go after school. Do you want to work in ICU? Then consider the competencies you might need for that area, maybe ACLS, and what you need to be confident. So the second one is really confidence in what you're doing, knowing that you're not alone, someone has your back, that, when you're in that high anxiety moment, there's another nurse there for you. If you're not confident, ask for someone. Your team members are there for you. And us as senior nurses need to be also reminded sometimes that we were once a student as well, or a new nurse, and we're there to support you. The third one is continued learning. So we know that nurses need to be competent. We know they need to be confident. But I think if we really start to set up nurses for success, if we start to look at that notion that learning is lifelong, right? You don't quit school and then you stop learning. There's BPGs out there. There's lots of resources. The RNAO, Conestoga, Fanshawe, all of the local colleges and universities have continuing learning opportunities. There's professional development. So really start to assess your own gaps in your confidence, in your competence, and then look for those learning opportunities to grow. The next one is a culture of mentorship and team culture in organizations. And so then again, this is where I see the organizations, academic institutions, nurses that have been around for a while need to start thinking about the success of our new grads. We need to take on that role as a mentor. We need to provide a safe culture in which we can grow and we can learn together. We need to celebrate that mentorship, build in a check-in person, develop strong onboarding and mentorship practices so that new grads feel comfortable and supported and are prepared for that lifelong career in nursing. build that built-in support system. One thing I would say I didn't do when I got out of nursing school was I didn't become really involved in my professional organization. I went to work each day, I was happy and everything, but over the last 5 years or so, I've really become involved in RNAO. I've connected with my local chapter. I'm on some of the boards, and I really enjoy that. I've got more of a professional identity. You feel like you have a network around you. It's a whole new experience. So I do encourage you definitely to look at those opportunities as well. And the last two I'll try and sneak in here before my time up is, one is compassion. I know many have touched on this so far, but compassion for self and for others. It's so important to take care of our own well-being and really recognize when we need a break and when we need support. So a colleague of mine often says, make sure to fill your own cup so that we can help others. During COVID, this is more important than others, that we show compassion to ourselves. And I noted in some of the other comments, and as well to others, which I think is really important. And so lastly, the job really needs to bring you joy. So I think we need to really step back and be proud that we're a nurse or a nursing student. Find that professional identity and be proud of your accomplishments. And as I sit back and I hear these students speak today, I'm really excited about the future of nursing. I think, wow, we're in good hands and things are going to be okay, because we have some great students that are about to graduate who are going to help support our healthcare system through thick and thin, through COVID and through not. And so I think we're going in the right direction. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. And I hope I didn't speak too quick trying to get in all my thoughts. So thank you.
Oh, and you got them in beautifully, Michelle. I think of your topic as the 5 C's and joy. So thank you very much. Let's move now to Linda Johnston. Linda, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks very much, Imogen. It's always hard to be the last speaker and try.
Oh, you're not last. Luella's after you.
Well, Luella, I apologize then for you, but trying to come up with new ideas. So I'll just make a couple of observations. Firstly, in relation to being in school during the pandemic and how that experience was for students and for faculty, it may have looked like an image of a swan gliding seamlessly across the top of a lake. But I can tell you there was an awful lot of paddling going on beneath the surface. To reiterate what others have said around not only faculty having to pivot, the newest word in our terminology since 2020, but also our students needing to be online, clinical placements disappearing with varying degrees across the province, depending on the transmissibility of the virus. We also had faculty and students who had kids. So in addition to trying to do their programs, they were also listening to Peppa Pig 20 times a day, or worrying about how they were going to protect them from COVID. We also had graduate students who were working full-time while trying to complete their academic programs, and people who were being moved through various models of care into ICU, critical care situations where they'd never worked before. And so balancing those demands from the workforce on top of their academic programs, everyone has been an absolute credit to the profession in the way they've stepped up. When I talk about the paddling going on beneath the surface, but its invisibility, a good example is the issue around the externships that were mentioned earlier in this presentation. Those externships were originally proposed by the ministry to support the shortages in the workforce. And the original proposal, I think it's important for people on this call to know, was that programs should cease the academic programming scheduled for their final year students and move them into paid externship positions. And I am proud that the College of Universities programs in nursing, together with our colleagues in CATS, pushed back against that proposal and argued that for safety and for the profession, it was important for students to remain where they could in precepted placements, practicing to their full scope in preparation for entering the workforce. And for the externship program not to replace academic programming, taking us back 40, 50 years in nursing education to an apprenticeship model, but keeping it as a on-top addition extracurricular activity. And that's where it remains today. And it wouldn't have been without the advocacy on the part of your faculty, deans, colleagues, students, the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing, that would not have occurred if we hadn't been able to do that. And we continue to advocate on your behalf. And my final point is in relation to transition into the workforce. And again, think of the swan gliding across the surface, but of what's been happening below the surface. And in particular, the multiple conversations that have been held with the Ministry of Health, with deans and directors in programs of nursing around the new graduate guarantee and what that is going to mean and how that's going to support new graduates entering the workforce, and requesting on numerous occasions that consideration will be given to additional funding to provide a structured, evidence-based transition framework based on that developed by the Canadian Association of Schools of Nursing to support new graduates, particularly in the pandemic environment, into operating as licensed healthcare professionals. Okay, to date, we haven't had the success that we might have hoped for in relation to convincing the government to support this. But we will continue to advocate on your behalf. It is our job to support you as best we can. And we know that you can be contributing members of the healthcare workforce. You may indeed need additional supports due to the disruptions due to your programming in the past, and of course, due to the strains that are within the current healthcare system and those people who will be receiving you and looking after you and onboarding you. But I think we make a great team together, the academic partners and the students and the professional organisations, and together we can actually come out with some positives as a result of this terrible experience. Thanks, Imogene.
Oh, thank you very much, Linda. And yes, if there isn't the silver lining, as Doris always says, that we take from COVID, then we truly haven't made the most of it. So lastly, let me turn to you, Layla, to wrap up the panel presentation. So Layla, it's yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Imogene, and thank you to the RNAO as well for asking me to be part of this great panel. It's wonderful to hear everybody's thoughts on this. The concept of transition has always been in the foreground of my mind. I was able to do a concept analysis and actually had done a study that just finished this year on practice readiness and transition. So I'm just going to give you a snippet of what I've done in order for you to gain context of this, of what so what I want to do first is, first of all, I just wanted to let you know that I'm an associate professor with the School of Nursing at Nipissing University. I'm also the co-lead of our best practice guideline, the BPSO designation process. And I'm pleased to announce that in June of this year, Nipissing University, it has become a part of the BPSO family and is a BPSO designate.
And I cannot do that I'm also pleased to remind people that you got an award, because you will not say it, so I am going to say it.
Thank you. So yes, I did get an award on student mentorship this year as well. Thank you, Doris. Thank you so much for saying that. Now, what I'm showing to you right now in your screen is a concept analysis that I conducted along with some colleagues of mine to look at the concept of practice readiness in the literature up to 2020. And this is the model that we found. What I wanted to point out is that the whole notion of attributes, right? Cognitive capability, clinical capability, professional capability, all meld together to have a sense of self-efficacy, the student feeling a sense of self-efficacy, and this self-efficacy leads to certain consequences. That's provision of safe care, performance, confidence, and transitioning into the nursing role. What we found, though, in this particular review of the literature is that, as Ola had pointed out, the notion of the humanistic characteristics is not outlined really well in the in combination to practice readiness. How interesting is that, right? So the whole idea of practice readiness is very much geared to providing safe care and transitioning into the nursing role. But the whole, the idea of the humanistic and the compassion is still implicit in the literature. So we have a lot of writing to do. So given this particular model, it was a framework that I used along with some colleagues of mine to examine the state of practice readiness across the different programs in the School of Nursing at Nipissing University. I wanted to focus on our program, on the program that I teach at, and I teach at a second degree accelerated nursing program that has a different type of programming in that we deliver programming through one-to-one preceptorship program. So the students right from semester 1 is on a one-to-one preceptored relationship with the preceptor at our affiliate affiliate hospital partners. That's the University Health Network and the Hospital of Sick Children's or Sick Kids Hospital at this point. So the students get a theoretical framing in the first 3 weeks, and then they are guided in a triad model with a faculty, the preceptor, and the student. They engage in learning at the bedside with the preceptor, and then they come back every single week to debrief all that learning and then connect the literature with their experiential learning, right? And the faculty then helps them through reflective practice through that. So that's kind of how the model has started. So I did get some internal funding, and I was able to do this study on our nursing students. So I started out in 2019 and then collected data on that. And then 2020 came, and of course we were in the middle of the pandemic then. And so I really couldn't compare really the state of practice readiness because the situation has changed. My 2019 students have been in the practice setting taking care of patients, and my 2020 students have graduated from their nursing program. This is their final semester through virtual simulation that the faculty had designed along with some help from the Alliance, the Simulation Alliance programs. So totally different context of really experiencing the last semester of the program, but all of them up to semester 5 have had the similar experience of a one-to-one preceptor program. So what I wanted to show you is kind of the difference in terms of performance capabilities. This is based on the survey through Casey Fink, which is a validated tool that looked at practice readiness. But what I want to point out is this: in the basic assessment or basic skills or competencies, there's really not much of a difference between the mean scores of both the non-COVID, which is the pre-pandemic, and the pandemic people, right? So the mean is generally the same, but where they begin to differ is in the advanced components, which is around advanced hemodynamics, 3.35, 2.47. There is a difference in chest tube care, 2.96, 3.29, 3.78 in ECG, and 3.12. So it is showing me to a certain extent, it's showing me that the non-COVID, the pre-COVID 2019 group is having, is showing a little bit of a difference in terms of their sense of competency around the advanced practices, like advanced competencies. But in the basic competencies, they are generally pretty much the same. physical assessment is one, medication administration is another, etc.
So Luella, I'm just looking at the time and wondering if you could wrap up then now.
Sure. This is just my last point here. And my last point
Okay.
is in caring for patients. The difference is here is that the belief that they can actually care for 3 patients is a lot more leaning towards those that are in the pre-COVID. So the difference is they both feel comfortable in caring for 2 patients, COVID and pre-COVID, but when it comes to 3 or 4, there becomes a difference. So what do you do with that? So I sent this data to my faculty, and they actually revamped some of their curriculum content to reflect some of the gaps here, so that they are doing more of the advanced stuff in terms of critical thinking. So this is how we should be looking. We should be studying what's happening in our cohorts, and then feeding back to our, in order to reconfigure the curriculum to adapt to the context that we're in, because practice readiness is going to be, I think, from my perspective, an ongoing issue, regardless of the context. And what we need to do is to adapt to the varying context.
So before we open to questions, Irma Jean,
Yes, Doris.
I want to make a comment, because it was fascinating. First of all, every presenter was amazing. But Michelle, you spoke about competence and confidence. And Luella,
Yeah.
you actually in your results also showed something. So here is a suggestion for post panel now. The 2 of you should get together and write something. No, really, I mean it. Because it was fascinating listening to you, Luella, as you were explaining what changed and what didn't change, especially on the issue not only of some competence that didn't, actually some improve, I saw there, documentation improve, but then the sense of confidence. And Michelle also spoke, and it will be interesting for this panel perhaps even to continue the conversation amongst yourself, and see if something, because you have a lot of commonalities in your comments, and it's fascinating. I want to also share that there is a colleague I just noticed as I was trying to see who else is in this webinar, and we have a colleague from Brazil whom I asked, and I'm not going to say who he is so we don't put him on the spot, if he wanted to share if in Brazil the experience was similar during this time. And he answered to me very nicely that he would prefer to do that next time. So Irma Jean, right for Susan, we will open for questions now, but this is to be continued. This is to be continued because I think we invite back the same panel, perhaps as observers, and we bring an international panel. Sandy, Linda, I'm talking to all of you, an international panel of faculty I am connected with all of them in South America. I know you, Linda, in Australia, and we too, and others. Like it will be so interesting to bring 4, 5 panelists, you're right, from China also, and to see how. So here is the task for you guys, and we will ask either one of you to organize, or if not, Susan, for you to bring a summary next time, a snapshot of the common things that you all found, whichever framework you want to present, like 5 minutes, common trends that you found, and then we send that in advance to the panelists internationally. It would be fascinating, and to see if the international community had the same, both from a faculty and from a student perspective. So all of you, right? Because I bet you my life, simply because we are doing the survey on nurses and well-being, and we did the one in Ontario, as you know, we did one across Canada, and we did one with Nursing Now. And I just reviewed the report of the international one. There are lots of commonalities. You know, it's like nursing itself. We always, for the good and for the bad, and for the best of time and for the challenges, the issues are the same, the depth of how the issues are experienced sometimes differ. So will be really fascinating if you are game for it. Let's open for questions. Heather and Imagine, I don't know if there are questions, but what a rich panel. What a rich panel. The students, the new grads, and the faculty, and all of you. Just amazing.
And as you say, some very nice common themes.
Yeah, yeah.
I do see that Arlene is on, Arlene Masaba, and Arlene, as we know, is in Qatar. I don't know, Arlene, if you might take up Doris's challenge or if that puts you on the spot.
Well, Arlene was in Qatar for quite a bit of the pandemic. Just so you know, Arlene also worked at RNAO. So Arlene was in Qatar. She led also the BPSO. Then she came to Ontario and she was hired by us and she worked for a few months with us and now she's back in Qatar. So here you go.
Yeah.
Go for it, Arlene.
Is someone able to unmute Arlene if she's muted?
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Arlene.
Good evening. Good evening from Qatar.
Miss
So,
you.
yes,
We miss you.
I miss all of you too. So I do see some commonalities. That's what you've said, Doris. Seems to be universal. Like the need for mentorship is always there. The fear of not knowing what to do the minute that they are that they are working as nurses. It's also something that I see and I observe among the students. But yeah, it would be great if we could combine both students from Canada as well as international so that they could share all their experiences. Because as a faculty, I think one of the things I always ask myself is, what can I do so that I could help prepare them? Not really to spoon feed them, but to hold their hand when they need it and then to let go when they're ready for it.
Oh, nicely said. Thank you. And I think of your comment, Sandra, compassion in the midst of chaos. That's what I'm thinking when you speak, Arlene. Well, we're open for questions. Any questions? Number one from our
there is a question from Rachel.
Now, there's also a question from Raul here.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And so, Rachel, do you want to go ahead and then we'll go to Raul?
No, the question is for Rachel and Lali and Ola. And it is with your experience as students during 2020, what would be most important thing you would do as teachers? Oh, in day one, if you have to leave, and please, Raul, can we spare your question? If you have to leave another pandemic in the future.
Oh, this is a great question. Okay.
I know.
Rachel, do you want to start with that?
Sure, I can do that. So I think one of the main points that I touched on before that I think would be super essential if I were to take on a teaching role would be to establish that communications from day one, making sure that, not only are you just sending out messages to students, but you're taking the time to listen to them and make them feel that their voices are very important, because they are, and taking the time to listen about their feedback, because sometimes there are some things that students can see from a different perspective that can be beneficial for things to change for students to be able to learn better in online environments and things like that. So I think communication would be my big thing.
Okay, and then Layla.
Yes. So to add on to what Rachel said, she said something that I was going to say, but very close, not the same thing, is to communication, yes, and to give them reassurance, as during the pandemic, that to tell them that they're not alone. Because during the pandemic, not only we are socially isolated from the other people, from our loved ones that we care about, but also we are alone in undertaking our academic duties, like what Ola said before, doing their assignments, and we get confused about things, and then they panic because they don't know, and it's really hard to sometimes communicate with people because you have to respect their time, and maybe you can't give enough notice, things like that. So to tell them that they're not alone and the help is there, and also to show them to, as what Arlene said, to hold their hands until they are ready to let go.
Oh, and Lally, listen, I am sorry. I keep saying your name wrong, and I apologize. It's such a pretty name, and I seem to want to change it somehow. I'm sorry. Lally, thank you. So let's have Ola give her comments to this question.
Richard has pretty much said everything, but another thing I want to add is that as a teacher, I would recognize the students as partners in the learning experience, right? Because we have this power as students. There's this power imbalance, and it's like whatever you say goes. But recognize that maybe at that time we'll be in a new generation, and the students might learn differently. For example, now we learn with technology, and most of our professors are not quite adept with that. So just recognizing the students are partners and establish and maintain that communication network. Very important.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we have one more question, and this may be our last question. And it's again for our student team and new grad on the panel. The question is, what would be your one piece of advice for the incoming nursing students who will start their nursing life during this pandemic? Let me go to you, Lally, and hear your comments, and then we'll go to Rachel and Ola again last.
So one piece of advice I would give to the new students would be about resilience. So we don't all walk the same path, but we have the same destinations. And same goes, we all want to achieve the same thing, but we will have to now achieve them in different ways. And for that, you have to be resilient. If one path is blocked, you should be thinking about other ways to get involved. I think that was the main focus on how to survive as a student in the pandemic as well. Really to not lose hope and to take things as learning opportunities and look for other ways to achieve the same thing.
Oh, wonderful lesson learned, Lally. Thank you. And then Rachel.
So I think one piece of advice that I would give to students, because I think that this is something that is often overlooked as students, and is to believe in yourself. Because, I find that a lot of students sometimes, don't believe that they know something, or don't believe in themselves enough, and that's when we get this imposter syndrome and things like that occur. So really believing in yourself, building up your voice, building up that confidence, because you need that confidence when you're in the field. You need to be able to have those skills to believe in yourself, to be able to have those difficult conversations with patients, or with staff members, or with fellow colleagues, right, to be able to advocate and things like that.
Okay, thank you very much. And Ola.
Rachel and Lally has pretty much said everything, but it's okay to be afraid. Honestly, it's okay to be scared, but always do not forget to believe in yourself and reach out. There are people who feel the same way about there are people who feel the same way as you do, and reach out to support, and always network. I really think it's very important.
Oh, thank you very much. And now, before we conclude, I just want to see if anyone else on the panel had any final words they might want to say. And one word it might be is all we have time for. If not, it's okay.
I'll say something, Imogene. I'd say believe. And it's believe both in the faculty and your own capabilities in terms of managing crisis, and also believe in yourself as students that you have the capability to manage this crisis. So believe.
Lovely. Again, reinforcing one of Ola's comments. Lovely. Okay, if there are no other comments, I'll I'll thank the panel very, very much. You have been just tremendous in your open sharing, your beautiful insights, and the evidence here of the back and forth camaraderie and partnerships and relationships that are happening among students and faculty as we move through this time. So thank you again. And as Doris said, to be continued. So we'll keep on this topic. So we'll move the slide now. PG, I believe Doris may want to make some overview remarks on all these activities.
I will, but before I do, I just want to say how inspiring you all have been. Because I take important words from all of you. Lali, I think is so wise to say that the destiny of all the students is the same. The journey to there may be a touch different, although the pandemic even made the journey a bit, kind of uniform, but the destiny is the same. And Rachel, the issue that the confidence, right, that goes together with the comment on the belief, but and goes together with also with Michelle said about competence and confidence. Those are two different things. One day I can talk with the same three students about my experience being thrown into a war. That's perhaps even more difficult than a pandemic in many ways. And how that for good and for bad will build me in who I am as a peace activist, but also confidence that you can open a unit for patients in the middle of the night, even though you are in the second year of nursing school, right? It's like being thrown into the river without you really not knowing to swim very well, but if they believe that you can do it, you do it, right? That's confidence. And then the comment about fear, Ola. And I think it's just so important that you said that. Because also the faculty, I'm sure, felt fear. I mean, Linda spoke, Dean Linda spoke about the issue of some faculty had kids, they had afraid they will get COVID. We were all afraid that our kids, our families, ourselves, who knows who, right, will get COVID. Nurses in the field were afraid, right? Sandy spoke about opening hours to just talk about whatever, not you did right or wrong, just talk, right? So I think there is more things in common when I hear all of you than tensions that are different between students and faculty. The missing piece in the equation for this conversation, but many of the participants are nurses in the field, is that we also need to build, and I think, Michelle, I'm sorry, I'm referring so much to your talk, or is important. And I think, Luella, you alluded to that too, the issue of culture of mentorship. And I think, Rachel, you spoke that this will continue, that this is not just now, right? Now is the pandemic, but the issue of culture of mentorship, even in the best of times, when you guys go to the units as a student, it's not only the faculty responsibility, it's not only the student responsibility. I was talking yesterday with a couple of nurses, and I said, why is it that we put up with people saying, sorry, I can't mentor students? I don't know if you remember it, Majin, when I remember I was in charge of professional practice and I said, it's not an option. It's not an option. It's simply not an option. This is our next generation. So I think we need to bring perhaps into the next panel, I know
Yeah.
Heather was taking notes, a couple of both one chief nurse, one nurse manager, 2 staff nurses that were drowning in the middle doing work, trying to save patients, right? But that, you know, we need them to still mentor. So I think all of those things are so important, and yet for all of us in nursing, the destiny is the same. Going back to Lali's comment, the destiny is the same. We want to do good for patients. We want to have careers that thrive, not that drown, right? We want to know how to deal with our fears when they are, either because we don't know a skill or because there is a pandemic, whatever. Always there will be some elements, right? And we want to conquer both the competencies and the confidence, right? So I think that your remarks were hugely, hugely, hugely profound, all of you. And together it really make for a very good work with us at RNAO. We are working on a mentorship programs. Heather, I'm going back to you, Heather, with the mentorship program for long-term care, for example, but that can expand to other sectors. And I think this is a group that we can, you know, brainstorm together. When we have a draft, we are brainstorming with other groups also, but I think will be really important. Just to wrap up on recent issues, in case that you didn't see the flurry of activity and you're not on Twitter or other types of social media, or that you have not heard in the media. As you know, yesterday there was an announcement by government on what at the beginning some interpret as mandatory vaccines. And then as you peel the onion and as you hear for real, you understand it's mandatory testing, not mandatory on vaccines. But nonetheless, it is progress. Nonetheless, compared to other jurisdictions in Canada, except of Quebec, it is progress. And it's progress that was driven, as you know, by RNAO. We started this campaign of mandatory vaccination for healthcare workers in July 10, more or less, July 12, and then we added to it mandatory vaccination for educators from daycare to all the way to universities. And of course, we added also the vaccine passport. What we got yesterday, that's so you know what we got, and Imagine or someone can put please the, yes, thank you, the 3 M's. What we got is you can look the action alert, the press release, but what we got really is that a healthcare worker and visitors and frontline workers for now in 4 sectors, but I'm pretty sure it will expand to all. They have they either need to get the vaccine. If they don't get the vaccine, they need to take a course, and I will comment on that in a minute. And they also need to bring proof of vaccination, of testing, negative test. The concern that RNAO has, of course, is that it leaves it open to not getting the vaccine for any reason and every reason in the world, right? It doesn't specify. We ask that it be for medical exemptions. That is not the case. So my body, my choice. And someone taught me something really good today that I will use in the Twitter, which is, you know, my career, my profession, what I committed to patients. But my body, my choice in this case is not so simple because it impacts patients and it impacts colleagues. Colleagues don't want to work with colleagues sometimes because they're not fully vaccinated. So we will insist, we will continue to insist on mandatory vaccination with exemption for medical conditions. And we also are asking, and you can see that in the middle there, we are asking that if people don't get vaccinated, a minimum of 2, a proof of 2 negative tests to bring if they work full time. If they work part-time or casual, a proof of a negative test in the last 24 to 48 hours. That's number 1. I am hopeful, although until we don't see, we don't know, that the Ministry of Education hopefully will present a more solid a response to this in terms of more sharp and more strict response. Because ventilation, as you know, in schools has not been completely fixed at all, and small class sizes are not happening. And in daycare to kindergarten, they took the masks off. So the conditions are there, quite frankly, to be a serious condition in the fall when things get colder. So we hope that at the very least the masking goes back, and you see that we are asking that because right now it's only from grade 1 to 12. We're asking from 2 years old to all the way to first grade. And we are asking also the issue of the proof of 2 negative tests. We are also asking the vaccine passport for everyone, for public places that are not essential services, of course. You can never deny essential services, but if you are going to a theater or to whatever game, you want to know that whoever is next to you is safe and that you are not putting yourself in danger by going to an activity. So it's really to protect the public and to protect businesses, especially small businesses that are really having a big challenge. That will continue. Please retweet. When you get people blasting you from whatever, don't you know the science? Don't you know this vaccine is a hoax and whatever? Don't engage in answering because you will never get out of it. That's number one. For those that are calling for Dr. Moore resignation or fire Dr. Moore, I would beg you not to engage on that. You do know that RNAO did ask at the time for Dr. David Williams' resignation, and we don't regret we did. Because it's a great person, Dr. Williams, but for the pandemic was, not what we needed. But Dr. Moore, it is the view of RNAO, it is what we need. It's not an easy situation for him in which he is working. And I do think he's pushing the agenda, and I think we will be better than what we were in the past. So this is my advice. Of course, you do what you want to do with your tweets, etc. Nurses vote is critical. We will be issuing the federal elections platform tomorrow or Friday morning. We are asking aspects that you all will be very pleased on what we are asking, and be thoughtful in how you vote. Be thoughtful in how you vote, because it has implications not only for your work, for your life, right? And I don't want to comment on the specifics in Ontario, but because we're dealing with federal elections now, and it's very important.
Yeah, Doris, and I think the other important thing is do vote.
Yes, do vote, please. Do vote. Do vote. Absolutely. Thank you, Imagine. Action alerts, go to the action alert. There are a couple. There is one on opioids. There is one on vaccine justice. There is one on the 3 M's, of course, the 3 mandatory asks, etc. Keep doing that. I know it takes time, but honestly, it's so easy. You Google RNAO action alerts, they come and you just click. If you agree, of course, otherwise you don't, right? All in all, we are tremendously active in the file of long-term care standards. You need to know that RNAO is engaged up to here, like 5 committees. I think you will see good things coming out. I think that for those that poo-poo the acceleration committee, they will regret that they did, although you will have some that will say that never is enough. And the reality is never is good enough. But we are leveraging a tragedy, because it was a tragedy what happened in long-term care. We are leveraging a tragedy into remembering and honoring those that lost their lives and their families by doing something better for the future of people that live in long-term care, and also their families and the staff, because the staff in long-term care also paid a really very difficult price emotionally, physically, mentally, socially. They lived without their families for many times because of fear of what they saw. I know now in the last wave, it was all about ICUs and critical care, and truly it was. But let's please don't forget that the first and second wave were all about long-term care, or mainly about long-term care. It was heavy, 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 heavy. And RNAO knows that firsthand because we help them staff the places. There is a lot more. This is just in a nutshell, a little bit of what we are doing. On the BPG front, new BPGs out, 4 new BPGs being developed, all very important. On the both provincial, national, and international front, many, many activities related to all the way from BPGs, both in Ontario, in Canada, and abroad. Entire governments being implementing BPGs, Chile, Spain, and others, but also helping associations to strengthen themselves, given some of the changes that have recently occurred. What else? ICN, CNA, CFNU, with all of them, we are in connection, trying to help as best as we can, or collaborate or partner wherever we can. Same with Coupon, CATS, and Kazan, and any other nursing and also external to nursing organizations. To say that we are in demand, that RNAO is in demand by external organizations and external to nursing is an understatement. To say that I know you are exhausted, I want to tell you we are exhausted too, to tell you the truth. But you know what? As Irma Jean said it in one moment, it has been the best and the worst of time altogether. And we are going to thrive and to build a stronger and even more respected, well-respected profession for you guys, the new generation, because this is all that it is about. We are going to build a stronger future so you can thrive, and you in turn then can live a stronger profession for the next generation. And that is what we all do, the same as we do with patients, right? We do that also for one another. If we can put the next slide, I just want to share some promos in terms of membership. You do need to know that we finished last year with almost 46,000 members, a tiny shy of 46,000. My projection is that this year we are going to finish probably close to 48,000. So get ready for the 2022, because then we are going to celebrate the 50,000. And it's just going. It's like a spiral thing. And partially it's because we are everywhere, right? Partially it's because you guys are everywhere. Like if you look at the 3 students that are here today, and your co-chairs and the task forces that you are involved, and the initiatives that you all are involved in addition to the interest groups, etc. It's amazing. It's amazing. And I think that it should fill you with energy and with pride for the go forward. New grads join for free. Please tell your colleagues. And right now, for nurses that are not RNs and NPs that are not members, please do remind them that now they can join 3 months for free, meaning they pay next year, but they get the rest of the 3 months this year for free. So that's it. If you get 5 members, if I don't say this, Daniel will get mad with me. If we don't get 5 if you get 5 members, you get next year membership for free. And don't forget the uniforms. Don't forget the uniforms. And I know how many they have bought because we pay for the embroiderment of the name. So the uniforms say here RNAO, and then say below your name and your credentials. So I actually think I need to get to Rachel a uniform. Rachel, are you part of the video? Well, because you just graduated, that's why. The others have not yet, so here you go. Rachel, are you part of the video promo on the uniforms or not?
No.
Okay, Rachel, you are my promo then. Okay, you will choose. I will tell Raulito you are there. You tell Rachel that she needs to choose her uniform and we will do a video also with her and the uniforms. They're beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. So that's all that we have to share at this point. Thank you again so very much for your partnership, for your participation, and for your words of wisdom. Tremendous, tremendous.
Thank you, Doris, and thank you all. And that ends our webinar for today.
Thank
Bye-bye
you.
all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Hi, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Miigwech.